In today's focus, we're taking a look at an epic migration phenomenon in Europe. Now, since the pro-Russian insurgency erupted in their country in 2014, over 1 million Ukrainians have travelled to neighbouring Poland to join the labour force. The economy in Ukraine, still handicapped by war and corruption, is sluggish, while across the border there's been uninterrupted growth and even a labour shortage, partly because so many Poles have moved further west, some 2 million of them. Recently, though, authorities in Kiev have criticised Warsaw for referring to Ukrainian workers as refugees and using them as an excuse not to accept asylum seekers from Syria and elsewhere. Ukrainian businesses, meanwhile, are finding it increasingly hard to hold on to their workers. France 24's Gulliver Cragg brings you this report from both Ukraine and Poland.
EU flags here symbolise Ukraine's aspirations to join the Union and adopt its values. It's what these protesters are demanding. But today, for many Ukrainians, that circle of stars represents something rather simpler: escape. It's to be seen all over Ukraine on posters advertising working visas for EU countries, mostly for Poland. Vova is one of hundreds of thousands who've decided to give it a try.
The pay here is just too low to live on. But you know, hope springs eternal. So we still hope that life in Ukraine will improve someday and we'll come back.
Several dozen buses to Poland leave Kiev every day. This one makes it to Warsaw in 12 hours. From there, Vova will travel on to Świebodzin in the west of the country. We caught up with him a few days later in training at the Coimex haulage company.
So this is the driver's card reader, right? How often do we have to check it?
Every 28 days, about once a month.
Back in Ukraine, I was earning 300, 400 euros a month. And here, well, I haven't been paid yet, so it's hard to say. But my colleague here will know better.
1,500 to 2,000 euros.
Today, 80% of Coimex's drivers are Ukrainian. Trucking is big business in Poland, whose firms cover a quarter of the European market. Yet Polish drivers are thin on the ground. They prefer to work in Western Europe or to take more sedentary jobs.
Unfortunately, today's technology does not allow us to operate trucks without drivers, so we have to recruit people. Ukrainians are culturally very close to Poland, and the two languages are similar, so that's not really a barrier.
Areki himself moved here 12 years ago from Algeria and obtained Polish nationality. But people like him are very rare. According to the 2011 census, just 1.5% of Poland's population was of non-Polish origin. The arrival of more than 1 million Ukrainians over the past 4 years has increased that proportion significantly. In the southwestern city of Wrocław, every 7th inhabitant is now Ukrainian. This new community centre offers Polish lessons, legal advice and cultural events. It tries to bring together Ukrainians and Poles, who aren't always entirely welcoming.
In this moment, when they see all around the country foreigners, it's quite awkward. I mean, it's not something that they're used to. But I think after several years, people will just get used to it, that they live in a multicultural community.
Poland is wary of multiculturalism. It has not taken in any refugees under the EU's relocation scheme. But its leaders regularly point to the Ukrainian influx as evidence that the country is doing its bit and can't afford to help anyone else.
Poland has taken in around 1 million refugees from Ukraine, people that nobody else wanted to help. Today they are with us and we are helping them.
The government continually repeats this line, but it is not true. Only 400 Ukrainians have refugee status in Poland. Most of the migrants are not from the war-torn Donbass region, and like the owners of this beauty salon in Wrocław, they see themselves not as fleeing conflict, but as seeking opportunity.
A refugee is someone who gets help, money from the state. Ukrainians don't get that. The 1.5 million Ukrainians in Poland are people who work and pay taxes.
The salon has 4 employees, all Ukrainian, working for a Polish clientele that seems very satisfied.
It's the first time in all my long years that I've come across a technique like the one they use here.
Natalia frequently has to leave the salon, though, and visit administrative offices trying to sort out papers for her staff and family. She's been here a year and a half already, but she says Poland's bureaucracy is not up to the task of handling so many new arrivals.
Lots of people wait more than a year to get their presence here legalized. We applied for my kids and my husband's residence permits on the 13th of January 2017, and we still haven't got a decision.
Back in Ukraine, Vova's former employer has a different kind of migration headache. His drivers keep leaving.
They abandoned me when I was counting on them. I've had to stop everything. The trucks, the work, because I've got no people, and I don't really know what to do in this situation. Look, I built this hangar for repairing the trucks, but it's all stopped, and there's no money.
Yuri says he understands why Vova and the others left, but can't afford to pay them higher wages. He's thinking of emigrating himself, but it's not so easy.
To leave, I'd have to sell everything, but who needs it other than me?
Ukraine's population has been falling since 1993. There are fears the next census in 2020 may reveal a new, even sharper drop.
Gulliver Cragg reporting there from Poland and Ukraine. Now, for analysis on this, let's bring in Dorota Dakowska. She's a professor of political science, and she joins us from Lyon. Professor, some analysts and even diplomats have dubbed this a win-win situation. On one side, we have Poland, which needs to strengthen its workforce, and on the other, we have, of course, Ukrainians that are pouring in, and they're, of course, able to earn 5 times as much as they can doing the same job in their own country.
Well, yes, we may say it's a win-win situation now because we see this dire economic situation of the Ukrainian economy and these people who are seeking the work in the West. And also we see several branches of Poland's economy that desperately are seeking for workers. So, but still, this is a politically fragile situation.
Now, this inflow has slowed Polish wage growth, of course. Is that something that could, in your opinion, contribute even further to the westward migration of Poles?
Well, I think this western migration of Poles have already taken place after the EU accession, Poland's EU accession in 2004. So we know that there is a backward trend now. What may happen is that some part of this Ukrainian population that now work in Poland could go further west, for instance, into Germany, if the Polish government does not secure good working conditions for this population.
Now, of course, part of the problem is the fact that Poland is a country that's more used to immigration than migration. So a case of something that you're familiar with being less frightening?
Well, Poland always used to be a migration country, it's true. Well, I would say the many Polish governments also were supporting Ukrainian efforts to move to the West, to the European Union. Well, now the position of the right-wing Polish government is quite ambiguous, as we could see, towards European Union, towards the immigration issue. But I think they are aware that they need this population of workers, because these Ukrainian citizens working in Poland are workers and not refugees.
Now, let's bring our attention to those Ukrainians that are moving to a country that they're, of course, unfamiliar with. Are there any integration programs that you're aware of that are being offered to this population?
Well, hardly any. Integration programs are offered by the Polish government to people who are recognized as refugees. And as we know, it is very difficult to be recognized as a refugee in Poland. But I would say that the Ukrainian community is quite well organized. And also, interestingly, there is now a Ukrainian trade union since 1 or 2 years, which is quite active and is also supported by a Polish trade union confederation, which is also a sign, we could say, of the importance of this Ukrainian workforce.
Lastly, looking at this on a larger scale, there have been concerns in Western Europe that with the European Union granting visa-free travel to Ukrainians, rather similar inflows could be seen elsewhere.
Well, it is possible now to get a visa-free movement to Poland and the European Union for Ukrainians, but this requires getting a very costly biometrical passport. So there are only very few to have it, but there are many possibilities for Ukrainian workers to work in Poland. For example, most of them work on a seasonal basis. So these are supposed to be seasonal jobs. Employers declare them, and they're supposed to work like 6 months or maybe 9 months. So these are mothers, fathers, grandmothers who have left their family back in Ukraine and who work in Poland for a short period of time.
Dorota Dekowska, Professor of Political Science, thank you so much for speaking to us here on France 24. Well, that's it from us in the newsroom. Do stay tuned for more news coming up after a short break.